Good Sunday to everyone again. I think all are touched by a very severe pandemic that has came by history in the West, and this is the pandemic of an error in our awareness. Like Albert Einstein said, we have become the servant, become a king. The servant is the rational, logic mind, and the king is the soul. We have put on a throne, on an altar, the logical mind, and we have focused all identifying ourselves in this logical mind. And the references to life are all done through a rational way. By this, we have closed the doors to the perception of the soul, the perception of truth and of reality. So, great saints and yogis have to come back to us to help us break this ice, this wall of my mind that is so arrogant and that thinks, that understands. A mind that has created so many toys, because the rational mind is useful only to organize and put everything in order in the outer world, to organize our day. And then we should put it on a shelf. But when our life manages to use other levels, an intuitive intelligence, the intelligence of the heart, that is not touched by the constant uneasiness of the mind. We can see it as an oscillation of the mind that is always moving. So with that occupies too much space, we cannot perceive the real things of life. We cannot identify the love as a stimulus, the peace of the self. All of that has been so hidden in our society. This is part of this history of our humanity. I will tell you about. Now, there is a great rebirth to many spiritual practices, to yoga, and these old dogmas of beliefs are falling apart, and this new forms, new spiritual ways that are prepared are coming out. And you can listen to the words of saints, the words of masters. This was said 70 years ago. And this can create like thoughts of what is right, what is wrong. But this is a little bit more refined limit as well of a dogmatic religious way. So it's another step that we have to overcome to arrive to the true wisdom, that real, direct perception of reality, without interference, without preconcepts of good and bad. As we know, we can use many words of the masters, and that is good to understand. But I do not know what Yogananda said 70 years ago, to who he said it, how, in what context he said it. So it's easy to build another preconcept. The same with Jesus. Things that have so what the yogi wants to do today is, it's not a question of concepts and thoughts. The importance is to arrive directly to the inner experience of a state of consciousness. States of consciousness to which Yogananda arrived, Jesus arrived. This awareness that there is no end or nor beginning, this awareness of a universal consciousness from which we can draw an interior experience of joy, love, light. In some way, the yogi wants to be free of all the different forms of conditioning, wants to have a direct impact and reading of the reality without intermediate. What happens to me? This is the point. Does this practice bring me calmness, joy? So I don't have to just believe, I have to experiment. When Yogananda came to America, he said, this is the Americans were people that wanted to experiment, and that's what Yogananda gave them. He said, practice this, practice the Om, practice the Amen, but feeling it, feeling inside of them what these teachings give you a direct experience. So a yogi, the person that directly participates, he wants to feel the bliss. And many times the mind depending on the level of restlessness of the mind, there is like a veil in front of this Om, the universal frequency. I tell a story to you that happened in India some years ago. Normally, an Indian practitioner goes into the woods, and this friend of ours, he was a yogi, he was wanting to become a yogi, and he goes into the woods and starts to meditate, and then he gets hungry, and then he comes back to the town to eat, and then he goes back to the woods to meditate. He stays close to the town because he feels that he needs to find food easily. And one day he sees a fox that has two legs that are broken. This fox was not dying, even if he was hurt, seriously hurt, but he was. And he says, I want to see this. How does he eat this fox? And he observes it, and he sees that there, at one point a lion brings food to this fox, some food. And so the fox eats, and then the lion leaves. And the next day, this again and again, this lion brings food to the fox. And at this point, this yogi is in training, realizes that, okay, so then if this fox that is handicapped can be nurtured by the lion and by God, so I should as well put my life in the hands and hoping of God, hoping that someone will bring food to me. I have faith. And he starts to meditate first day, second day, and he's hungry. A third day, fourth day, he's so hungry, so hungry. The fifth day, sixth day, nothing happens. Seventh day, he's almost dying. And another yogi goes by and says, tells him, what are you doing here? He said, I had a sign from God. He sent me this fox that was nurtured by the lion. So I saw it as a divine sign. So I should wait until someone that comes and brings me food. And this great yogi, this wise yogi, tells him, well, it could be that it was a sign from God, but he said, but what tells you that you had to take the place of the fox and not the place of the lion? So this is very common between human beings with the mind to mix up interpret in the wrong way, because we easily use our imagination and do not get it right. We have to use this quality that is this faculty that is discernment. There is even a jnana yoga, that is a type of yoga, a line of yoga that is arriving to God through discernment. It is not only to know, to read all and study and know a lot of readings and teachings, but in the true deep meaning, discernment means to know the real truth from what is not true. So if we know that everything is in motion and impermanent, and it's not the real truth, absolute truth, we can see that what does not transmute is really the soul, the quality of the divine. So we can see it as a door where we open, we see, distinguish, and then we see that this is not observe and we decide that this is not truth, and then we perceive and go back into our center, knowing that it is a mere perception. But for this, we have to arrive to a minimum of interior calmness. There's another story that comes from a great saint in India. Have you heard of Shankaracharya, the great reformator of the order of Swamis, and a great devout? He taught the philosophy of non-dualism. He is considered a great avatar and great saintly incarnation. He is seen as a great intellectual of India that at 8 years old started to write interpretation on the Vedas and of the scriptures. And he only lived until 32 years old, and he published many books. He was a very great yogi. And he had a disciple that was Padmapadan, a lotus foot. You can imagine this scenery of the old India, and there was this great, you can imagine him as a great master with his simple, humble disciple that was always doing service to his master. He would not participate to great satsangs or moments of discussion, philosophical discussion. He did not know anything about this, did not even know the scriptures, but he was always serving in a humble way. He would cook, he would wash his clothes. Other disciples of Shankaracharya would smile and say, oh, he is a bit, does not have a lot of culture, and not, he is a very simple man. He would see them like that. And the master saw that there was this arrogance of the other disciples towards this disciple. So then he decided to send a message, and there was a river, and the disciple was on the other side of the river, and Shankaracharya would call him. Padmapada, come to me immediately. And Padmapada, he would start running, because the request of the master was important and absolute, and he would just run to the point of not seeing that, realizing that there was a river, and he would run over the water. So this is why he was called Padmapada. These stories are also put in a poetic way, but there is a part of truth, because what it comes for is this simple devotion when you don't see obstacles, you don't see, but just the pure love for God and for your master. I think of the story of Yogananda that had a spastic disciple, and he could not walk very well, he could not talk very well. And Yogananda Yogananda would ask him to take the basket of donations after the ceremony, and he would walk, holding himself to the chairs to be able to balance himself, and he would do what Master asked him, and Yogananda was very happy of this. But then he said to the other disciples that this disciple was very, very close to liberation. And you know that it is very strange, very, very special for a soul to arrive to liberation. And the other disciples would say, how? They would realize that this man had a very simple devotion, and they told Master this. And Yogananda said, this is the devotion that God likes. The devotion like a child, with the simple, where there is no thought that covers, that if you think of the Christian world, in 1800s, there was this little girl that had to pick up wood in the French Pyrenees mountains. She had not studied, did not know much about religion, did not even know how to read or write. But she just would see this lady that would appear in this place where they would throw the garbage. And she was in ecstasy, seeing this beautiful lady. In pure ecstasy, this girl was. And this lady would ask her to come back. And people could see that this little girl was completely amazed with this smile. And then they asked the saint, this lady, asked her to go to the church and say that they had to build a church there, without following the normal etiquette of asking before, but she just directly went to asking to build a chapel. And this priest said, well, who is going to give me the money? What are you talking about? And after very little time, thousands of people started to come. And this simple little girl that did not have an idea of what meaning this had. This is how God chooses simple souls, where there are no mind impure thoughts, but simple. And so, as if it was a virus, this mind virus, we should find a vaccination for this. Devotion is this vaccination. Devotion that we can develop. And in the reading of the Bhagavad Gita, it says that our consciousness must be fixed, firm with the decision of devotion. I see this. I see that this happens in the artistic process. I was very happy to observe our friend Bijay, a Russian friend. He is working on the model of the Temple of Joy that he is building it in miniature model. And to see him in this creative process, and I can see that he just can't wait to come and continue working on this, because this is his principal activity. This focused mind and this creative process, charged with a desire to manifest what the energy, divine energy, wants and what wants to happen. And everything else is almost like disturbing. I remember this from my life. Now, my principal activity is to create artistic sculptures of light, and all the messages, emails, WhatsApps are disturbing, because the only one that I want to do is just to be in that creative aspect. This is beautiful. This attitude is a way to search for the divine and to contact that part. And the great yogis had this fixated mind, obsessed with the divine, with God. Just like St. Francis, he was with this, as a young boy here, very close by. He would leave everything. There is this moment when the father was accusing him because he was giving away all his things to the people. Sorry. And the father wanted to denounce him, and he would say, "This is all of God and for God." And he abandoned his life to his material life. He had the perception of joy and bliss, and just couldn't wait to be in that state without removing all the distractions, to be able to go deeper and deeper and deeper in this great bliss in his heart. And this is where we have to arrive, to intensify our research. These interior experiences, to intensify them, to have more and more this amrita, this divine nectar, and to be drunken of this in our hearts. In the creative process, something happens. For example, lately I created some something I've called the Gayatri Yantra. It's a divine frequency, a divinity. It has a sound, but it also is manifested in colors and geometry. When I was in this creative process, I just couldn't wait to go on and on. But until I put the last lighting on it, I can't see how it's going to happen and how it's going to be. But I do not know until I mount the whole thing and the lights, and then I put it on, and then I can see the last opera. I did everything. I put the lights on, I put it on, up. My wife was with me, and it would not work. It was not singing, it was not, the resonance was not there. It was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I just couldn't feel, I couldn't feel the vibrations. I feel them all the time, like if it is out of tune voice, and it wasn't singing in the right way, and this was hurting, unbearable hurt. The whole night I couldn't sleep, and I was thinking and asking and praying, God, what can I do? Singing mantras, and with Radhika's help, my wife, we added elements and changing the color of the light, and at one point it sang. Bling, it sang, and it was perfect. This was so good for me, but there was this passage of pain, and for whom those that work in a creative process, there is like a pain until you arrive to that point. And I think this is the same thing when we create our interior instrument. I read it in the autobiography. There is a chapter where Swami Srikteshwar talks to Yogananda about the astral world, and he tells about these souls that are so refined and evolved that if they have a wrong thought, they can have pain. If they have done something wrong to others, they feel such a big pain. They are so sensitive. And the same thing is when we progress in our interior research, where it becomes always more subtle. So, for example, if you make an error, like in the way you answer to someone, you feel that you answered in a wrong way, and that you could have answered in a better way. Or if you have a wrong thought about someone, you can feel immediately you can feel that a small pain inside you. It happens to me, not a lot, luckily, but that I feel I make a mistake. There is an immediate reaction, not in a punitive way, but it's something that is out of tune from the creation. And here you feel, here I made a mistake. So it's important to listen to your heart. It's the intuitive capacity of our heart. This is something that the mind doesn't give you. The mind is rational. This is when it's a system of feedback that we have. We can call it Divine Mother, Master, Guru. It's a way of feedback. It's a moment where our heart opens and we perceive the resonance with reality. And when we are off tune, there is something that is out of tune. It is very subtle. Each one of us has to arrive by themselves to this perception. I wanted to tell another of my stories as the last part of my discourse. About the interior guide. Yesterday, a friend of mine saw me happy in my small artistic lab workshop, and she told me, "This is. Is this something you always wanted, to live like this?" And I thought about it. I reflected, and if I think when I was 18 years old, if someone would have asked me what would have been your ideals of life, I would have said to have a workshop and to live from art, my productions of art, in a beautiful natural place in the south, not in Germany, that is a bit cold and where people are cold. Italy would have been the right place, with a beautiful Italian wife. That's perfect. With friends with whom I share my spiritual path. Fantastic. Better than this could not be. And then I'm building a house, so to have a nice wood house. And this is the ideal. It is actually at 18 I had this idea, and I didn't realize how that it really manifested in my life. But if I go back 5 years ago, I was in the complete opposite place. I had divorced, finances were not working, I didn't know what I had to do to find money, I had debts, I had changed a job, I didn't have a house, I didn't even have a car. I found myself to sleep in the sofa of the art academy, and I didn't know what was going to happen the next day, how I was going to live it. And there was a bit of a loop of a depression. How am I going to get out of this? So I tried other businesses that did not work. And I remember that moment when I was in this sofa of the academy, and I was saying, "This is the worst. I've never touched something so low." And I didn't know what I had to do. I had many offers of different paths, but they were not resonating with me. They could have been an easier solution, but I felt that that was not my path. And then there was a moment of break, where I actually surrendered. And I said, "Divine Mother, just do whatever you feel. You have to think about this." I will do whatever you bring to me every day. Give me the path. And this day, that was so low, every day, this meditation art, this was something that I could not imagine that I could live from this, but it started to, people started ordering these lamps, these pieces of art, and I started paying my debts, and slowly I found my wife, my new wife, and I really was impressed. How did all of this happen? And now I am in such a totally different situation. But with my rational mind, I had done everything I could until I surrendered. And then a flow of grace came in that took me to a different direction that I would have never thought. So I have a heart. I'm a bit hard-headed, and I have also a strong, rational, and structured mind. So sometimes I need a drill to break it, but somehow life takes us to the limit and helps us break the ice. But if you are in the low moment or a high moment, the important thing is how you live it. When I was in this depressive mode, it was an aware depression, I could observe myself in this situation. And there was a part of me that wasn't touched, and that was interesting. And now sometimes I sit in my workshop and I just can't stand from the great joy that I feel, that is so powerful that I have to sit down. So there is something, the observator, that is not changing and that is immutable, that perceives life. And even if he's in the midst of ups and downs, there is this calmness of divine consciousness that is like schermo is a screen where all these images happen, and there is this screen of the whole. This is the spiritual path, to identify with the screen and not with the images. So I finish with a phrase of the Bhagavad Gita. For those that know Brahman, this is the screen. The Vedas have no utility. Like if you have a well that is in the terrain that is completely flooded by water.
you.